So I want to pop a date or two in your diary. Saturday the 25th of March at 9 a.m. We've got Andy Kirk, who was a professional rugby player, played for Wakefield, had to retire early from that, and knows very well Rob Burrows, and played with Rob Burrows as well along that journey. So that'll be a great life story that he's going to share with us. That is on the 25th of February at 9 a.m. So again, invite friends, relatives, neighbours along to that, and work colleagues. It is trying to be evangelistic and outreach. 7 p.m. on the 25th, and then all day on the 24th, and on the 25th all day. We're looking at having Bruce Dyer. We've got one or two others that are sharing their life story with us as well. So that's going to be really good once again over those couple of days. Again, it'll be around food, so there'll be food on the evening, I think possibly curry, and there'll be an option of non-curry food as well, and veggie, and then there'll be breakfast again, and then there'll be sandwiches and things on the lunchtime through that day. Again, everything is donation-based, and even today, if you're able to give, please give generously and freely. The details, if you want to do a bank transfer, will be on the screen as well, just so we're able to cover the costs of doing food, and also just bless Gaz with coming and sharing with us this morning. Nobody expects anything from us, but we always want to honour and bless those that are navigating on that journey. I know Gaz has got a vision and a heart to serve community in different ways, as far as wrestling church and wrestling community, and reaching areas that maybe some of us in different ways are not able to reach. Cool.
Well, guys, it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Men's ministry, working with men, speaking to men, is a massive thing for me. It holds a very special place in my heart. I often get told when I speak I'm too masculine, and I'm like, yeah, well, amen. Like, guys need some masculine men to be speaking to them. None of this soft stuff these days. And when I share with you this morning my story, you'll understand where some of that has come from. You'll understand why I'm able to reach some of the people I'm able to reach. You know, we're talking working class, council estate, men of the world who are out there busting their backsides day in, day out to earn a living for their family. That's the kind of guy that I speak to. And I love speaking to Christian men particularly, because I think we all have a purpose in life. We all have stuff that we want to strive for. None of us, until the day we pass on, have ever stopped on this journey with God, and none of us can ever really, truly retire. We were just having this conversation a moment ago, and I've really got a heart for that as well, just encouraging men to come alongside other younger men in their journeys to help them be all that they can be. So let me take you back to my childhood, where I started from. As Denda mentioned, I'm from Keighley, a council estate there called Braithwaite. If you know Braithwaite, have we got anyone who knows the area? No? Yeah, okay, right. So essentially, Braithwaite, there used to be a rhyme when I was at school that went like this. Living in a council house in Braithwaite, you've got naught to do but a number 2 in your shoe in Braithwaite. I've obviously dubbed that. Go for some bread, you get shot in the head in Braithwaite. That legitimately happened. There was a corner shop at the top of my street where somebody got shot, and that was a thing. Okay, that's the kind of state we're living in. There's drugs, there's homelessness, there's families fighting families, there's cars burnt out on the street. Like, Braithwaite is a rough place. And it's not the only rough place in Keighley. There's others. Longley, yeah, we can talk about them all. But that's where I grew up. And I grew up with my mum, my dad, and my 2 younger brothers, Matty and Damien. I've got a little photo here of the first slide, I think, is me and my brothers. If you just want to chuck that up for us. Let's got the guy at the back there. Maybe not. Oh, no. Yeah, next one. It's all right if not. We'll do a little bit of guess, if you can guess what the uniform is if it comes up. No? Okay, never mind. If it pops up, just say. So essentially, I grew up with my mum, my dad, and my 2 younger brothers. When I was around 6, my mum and my dad divorced. It's quite a messy divorce. I remember my dad sat me down on the stairs, and he said to me, son, I'm leaving. You're the man of the house now. I was like, okay, all right. You know, young lad. What on earth does that even mean? And my mum took it really hard. So she started drinking. She used to drink quite heavily. There'd often be times where I would leave the house with my younger brothers. I'd take them to school, and then after school we wouldn't go home, we'd go into town. So there's me and my 2 younger brothers there. It's gone again. Maybe I'll just stop looking at the screen. Can you get any guesses on what that uniform is? Everyone says Thunderbirds. You're wrong. Church of the Nazarene. Anyone know the Church of the Nazarene? Yeah, they used to do a Tuesday night club where they come round in the minibus and pick us up. And then they used to take us to this church on bottom of Fell Lane. We used to be able to just go there and we'd do like Boy Scout stuff. And they'd talk to us about Jesus and they'd do this little thing with their hand where you'd all like do a salute at the beginning. I'm annoyed by this picture because my middle brother at the back, he's actually wearing my sash, which has got all my badges on. And I'm wearing his that has got barely any on. And I was like, come on. So yeah, that's me and my two younger brothers. Like I said, we'd finish school, and instead of going home, I'd go around the pubs in town. I'd go around the Commercial, Grinning Rat, which it used to be called way back then, Red Pig, Lord Rodney. I'd be going around all these pubs in Keighley looking for my mum. She had the house keys. So she'd be in the pub, she'd be cleaning in the morning, and then she'd be drinking her wages in the afternoon. So I'd get the keys, I'd take my brothers home, I'd feed them, I'd put them to bed, and my mum would fall through the door at some point, like 8, 9 o'clock, maybe sometimes later. And I'd feed her a cup of soup, and she'd go up to bed. And that was like daily life for me. You know, we had no money. I was a poor kid at school. We always had hand-me-downs. My uniform had holes in. I used to get bullied for it. You know, everyone called me the smelly kid, the poor kid. And that was like life, you know. That was it. I didn't think that was wrong. I thought that was normal. And my mum at weekends would leave us with different people. And one of those would be an older family member, a cousin, and he sexually abused me for about a year between the ages of 7 and 8. He didn't do anything on my younger brothers, but he had a thing for me. And I remember the date because there was poppies everywhere. But I eventually put up the courage to tell my mum that this had been happening, and it was November 11th, 1995. My mum come home. She'd sent him away, paid him, and off he went. And I came downstairs and I told my mum, I was like, Mum, this has happened. And thankfully, she believed me. I got on the phone to the police. And they took me to Airedale. They did some checks. And they were like, yeah, there's proof here that this has happened. And the police arrested him pretty much immediately before my family got to him, because straight away people were on the phone. They didn't have mobiles then, but people were on the phone, and he got arrested, went to prison, served, I think, 7 years, for it. So that kind of, and I used to just get lost in this world of superheroes and characters. And that to me was like my escape from life, from school, from bullying, from what I was going through with my mum and this abuse. And I would just fixate on it, and I'd be like, oh man, I'd love to do that. I'd love to be like them. They're strong. They're confident. They've got it all together. No one would hurt them. And that was the allure to me. It was a world I could get lost in. And I used to practice with my brothers and my cousins, and we'd wrestle each other in the front room. We'd get cushions on the floor, and we'd be doing suplexes off the sofa, and we'd be at school, and we'd be throwing each other down the hills and stuff. And I took some time off after the abuse had happened, and I went back to school. And I thought, okay, this is all fine. No one's going to know what's happened. It's all right. They just think I took a break. But both my brothers had told everyone at school what had happened. So when I got back, I then started getting bullied again. I'm getting called names like bum boy, and I'm getting jumped on my way home from school. And I just thought, as if I wasn't a victim enough. So I started fighting back. I started scrapping. I was always getting in fights. And it was, kill or be killed as far as I saw it. I'm like, I'm not letting people hit me anymore. And I started getting more aggressive and more violent. And I had counsellors coming to school to see me. They were always like, you can't be doing this, you can't be doing that. And it was crazy. Moved to secondary school and thought, this might change something. So I went to Holy Family Secondary School. So I had this Roman Catholic kind of influence going on, and prayer and mass and stuff. I didn't really pay attention to it. It just felt like school. But there was one woman who, throughout most of that time in my life, was an absolute rock and a godsend. And that was my grandmother. So my grandmother was Gladys, the Welsh dragon. All my family are from Connethley, South Wales, hence the name Gareth. So I could do the accent, you see. I could turn it on and off. And my gran was, every Friday night I'd go and stay with her. And she would buy me books about dinosaurs and books about the human body and bugs and all this kind of stuff. And we'd build those little, I don't know if you remember, you used to get the glow-in-the-dark skeletons, and you used to build them up. And she used to get me all of those. I had them all in my room. And she would pray for me every Friday night before I went to bed. And she'd send me home with like a little ginger parking cake. And, she was like constantly kind of a rock there for me. Even in secondary school, every Friday night I'd go and stay at my grand's and she'd pray for me. And she'd be telling me about God and she'd be telling me about Jesus. And in fact, actually, she had more pictures, weirdly. And now I know she's a Catholic and I understand it a bit more. Totally makes sense. But she had more pictures of Mary in her house than she had of her 8 children. And I've lost count of how many grandchildren and great-grandchildren that she had. But Mary everywhere. I was like, what is this all about? But anyway, so that was my gran. Every Friday night I'd stay with her. And then I'm going through secondary school, getting near the end of secondary school, starting to think, well, what do I want to do in my life? And my mum had disappeared for a couple of weeks, and I got myself a job as a window cleaner. And I was kind of working as a window cleaner in the morning, going to school and then doing some other stuff and kind of like trying to look after the house while she's gone because she just completely disappeared with my younger brother, and my middle brother had been taken into care at this point because my mum had battered him. This is just, I'm talking like this is normal. It's not normal. I know it's not normal, but this is the place I'm growing up in. And my mum just reappeared randomly and was like, oh, you're working now, are you? Well, you're a grown man. You can look after yourself. I'm throwing you out on the streets. She just threw me out. My grandmother was away, so I couldn't go to hers. Rest of my family were like, we're not letting you in. Your mum said she's throwing you out. We're not letting you in. And I found myself sleeping in a skip at the back of Curry's down in the town centre. I was just, are we done with the slides, Denver? Can we get another slide on? Is that all right? Cheers, mate. So I'm going to skip on a little just while he's sorting the slide out. I'll tell you a little story about this skip. So it's one of those big metal ones with a flip lid at the front. And I went there because I thought I need somewhere that'll get me out of the rain. It was like June, July. It wasn't like, kind of bad weather. But I thought if I'm going to be sleeping somewhere, I need somewhere that's warm. I need somewhere that's comfortable. And so these skips at the back of Curry's, they only ever had cardboard and polystyrene in them. So I'm like, okay, well, this will be a good spot to sleep. And I can jump in this skip. And I remember, 15-year-old lad with barely anything, sleeping in this skip. And the kids used to come around and play football in the car park at the back. And they'd use the skip as a goal. So I'm sleeping in this skip, and every now and then the ball would just smash against the side of it. And I'm in there, and it's just like thunder. I will tell you now, even still to this day, it's one of the scariest things. Because I was like, what if they find me? Am I going to get beaten up? I'm going to lose my spot. Is some other guy going to come now? He knows that I'm in this skip. And it was really scary. I used to steal food from Greg's at the bottom of the bus station, and I used to run through Woolworths when that existed, because Woolworths had 2 entrances. You go from one side, you could get right through to the other. I used to run through Woolworths and just stick food in my bags, and just because I had no money, I didn't know. There was no care services looking after me. I didn't know anything existed. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where the council office was. I went to the Key House project there, and they said, I was too young. And they said, we can talk to your mum. And I didn't have a mobile number. I didn't know my mum. I could give them the address, but there was nothing going on. So I'm there waiting until they said, come back when you're 16. So I'm sleeping in this skip. And I haven't actually been back to where this skip was until last year. I was in a BBC documentary, and they were doing some fact checking. So they called my mum and asked her, is all this stuff true? And she's like, yes, it was. And they said, can you take us to where this skip was? So we walked down to where this skip, and I was like, I can take you exactly to where it was. And as we get there, lo and behold, there is one of these skips. And, this documentary is still on iPlayer. You can go watch it. It's not a plug. But it's in there, and you see me just instantly, immediately, just like, oh, wow. Wow, that's still there. That still exists. There it is. So I tried to get a picture of it. It was quite a distance away from the fence. Completely different fence to what was there before. You could get around it before. But yeah, there it is. So you should just lift the lid up and just get inside. And there'd be like 3 or 4 of them, like there. And that was where I slept. And eventually, I turned 16, and I got into Bradford Foyer on Manchester Road. So the next slide is a photo of you get prison photos when they lock you up just to get a thing. There's me, 16 years old. I look whenever I see it, I just feel like you look in those eyes and there's just no life. You know? I was battered, I was broken, I was hopeless. I was sat there trying to put a smile on for this picture, and there's just nothing there. Absolutely nothing. And you'd think, all right, cool, you're in a hostel, you've got a roof over your head, you're not in a skip anymore. Hostels aren't nice places. They're not. The one I was in, there were people self-harming. Every now and then there'd be fighting, people stealing from each other, using drugs. It was just an absolute mess. And they're all young people, because Bradford Foyer is there for young people. The guy who signed me up to it, Angus McNabb, he was a Christian guy. And I remember sat with him in the initial conversation, and he said to me, "You got any addictions?" And I was like, "I like coffee." He was like, "You'll do all right, kid. You'll do all right." And I remember near the last time when I had my exit interview with him, nearly 2 years later, I was concerned about how much I was drinking, because it had that much of an effect on me. It was a horrible place. While I was there, I met a girl, and we started kind of hanging out and getting together, and started a relationship. And I kind of bounced in between jobs, because every time I got a job, they then start charging me for rent, and I didn't have enough money or any budgeting skills to be able to pay the rent and then keep in work. So it was actually better for me most of the time to not be working, because the benefits covered for the place. And I was like, well, I need to save up before I can move out. Very messy. But eventually I managed to get myself a place back in Keighley, just at the top of Lorcombe Lane. So I used to live just near there. And I'm talking to this guy like he knows the place. But he did say he's from Keighley. So I'm gonna name drop these places, looking for a nod of, oh yeah, I know that. So that's where I stayed. I stayed there, got some different jobs. I worked at Morrison's on a hot food counter. I worked at Subway. I worked at Domino's. I worked at Bright House to sell stuff to people at Bright House. I managed the Wild bakery shop for a bit. Bounced everywhere, worked in a few pubs, did a few different things. And I came through to Bradford to come and get my tongue pierced. And I know, very random, but this is why I remember it. I came to get my tongue pierced, and my girlfriend at the time, who I met in the foyer, she just ran across the street, and she was like, "Woo!" And she bumped into this couple, and she's chatting with this girl. And so obviously I follow her over, and there's me and this guy, and I'm stood there, "You're right, mate." He's like, "Yeah, you're right." And the two girls like, like all hugging or whatever, you know what they're like. And they're like, "Come back to ours, we'll have some drinks and food and whatever." So we go back to their place, and this is just by St. John's Church on Wakefield Road. So it's Brompton Road. So we're there, and they're kind of hanging out and all eating pizza. And I remember, because I couldn't eat the pizza because my tongue was pierced and it was all swollen. So they're all eating pizza, drinking beer, hanging out, having fun. And I'm sat there trying to drink a cup of soup. Like, what is this? And they were playing Call of Duty and drinking. And we struck up a friendship with these guys. So every other weekend we'd come over and we'd hang out. And then one morning they said to us, it goes, "Oh, do you want to come to church with us?" I was like, "What? Do you want to come to church in the morning? Do you want to come?" I was like, yeah, all right. You know, I went to a Roman Catholic primary school. My nan used to pray for me, went to mass, stuff like that. I did the Lord's pilgrimage as a kid, sang Ave Maria for 2 miles. That was a lot of fun. I was in the choir. You wouldn't believe it, but I was in the choir. Ugh, never again. But still, so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm a bit hungover. So we went to church, St. John's on the roundabout. It's not there anymore, but the church is, not the roundabout. So we walk in. And we go in, and it's quite similar to the setup, lots of open chairs. I'm expecting pews and organs, right? And the vicar shakes your hand at the door and then doesn't speak to you again until you see him chucking incense around or whatever. Like, that's what I expected. So we walk in, there's all these empty seats. They weren't empty, they were just open seating, space at the front, kids running around with little flags and little tambourines and stuff, and a beanbag at the back that people are just running and jumping on. Like, this is great. And the vicar, Howard, shook my hand and took me for a coffee and asked me where I'm from, and like genuinely cared about what was going on in my life. And then they had a live band, and I was like, "What? This is completely different to what I'm expecting." Admittedly, I'm hungover. It was a bit much. But I thought, you know what, this is all right. So we go down the front, sat second row, not front. I'm not that kind of weirdo. Until recently, we sat front row, didn't we, the other day? But sat second row, and they started with the worship. And they're singing all these songs, and I found myself like stood there, and I'm starting to kind of blubber a bit. And I'm like, oh, what's going on here? No, I'm not. It's fine. No, hard man. I'm a hard man. Oh, why am I crying? And I just could not hold it out. I'm just absolutely blubbering. And I got myself together for the preach. I sat there wiping tears off my face, sniffling, and Mrs. like, "What's going on with you?" And I'm like, "I ain't got a clue what's going on." Anyway, this guy comes over to me at the end and he comes steaming over. He goes, "Here, mate, I saw you crying." It's like, "No, you didn't." "Nah, that's not what you saw. It's not what you, no. He's like, no, I did. I saw you crying and I can tell you why." I was like, "Yeah, whatever. No, you go on, entertain me then. Entertain me. Why do you think I was crying?" "I wasn't, but why do you think I was crying?" And he goes, "You've just felt love for the first time in your life and you didn't know what to do with it." Boom. Oh. He was right, wasn't he? Nail on the head. Absolute nail on the head. I didn't admit that to him, but I was like, so what? He was like, "You need to start giving this thing a go. You need to give God a chance. Open your heart a bit to him. Stop trying to hold it all together." All right then. So we started going to church. So they had a Saturday night meeting. So that was a bit better for me because I could go to the pub after and we could hang out or whatever. So we used to go to the Saturday night meeting. It was Cassie and John Biggins who were kind of leading all of that, and it was a little bit more like younger people. Still had a few kids and stuff around, but it was a bit more fun. And we were going to there, and me and the girl, we decided we were going to get married. So we thought that's the right and Christian thing to do, right? So we thought we'll get married, and we had our wedding there, and it was a beautiful day, really, really, really cool day. My grandmother was there. Now, she'd been suffering with dementia for a couple of years at this point, so she started kind of forgetting who people were. We had to move her out of a flat, and she wasn't doing very well. But on this day, I remember because I had a bit of purple in my hair. I was a bit gothy looking then, and more pieces of metal hanging out of my face than I've got now. And everything was designed around purple. Like, that's my colour. So I was like, we're going to have purple flowers. I'll have a little purple, thing on, whatever they call them, camembert or whatever. I don't know what they're called. Anyway, so everything's purple. And my grandmother was there, and I remember screaming. She goes, "Gareth, will you wash that purple out your hair? You look stupid." I was like, what? But like, that was my nan as she always was. There was just something about that day. She was herself on that day. She wasn't the dementia-riddled woman who just didn't know who even her own children were and thought they were nurses. Like, this was great. And there's the next photo, Dan, if you could get that up, is just some pictures we had taken afterwards. So you actually do at weddings, everyone gets together and we're all taking photos. And there's my gran. So you can tell she's not well, she's a bit yellow in her skin, and she's been really, really struggling. But this particular photo, if you can see it, you see the purple, all looking good. I don't know if you can see the little red beam just at the bottom there. That's the handle of the wheelchair. So just as they start taking the photo, my nan pushed her chair backwards, and the handle hit me in the groin. Just as that photo's taken, and I'm like, and you can see there's a bit of a smile on her face. After the photo was taken, she wheeled forward, she looked over her shoulder, and she went, "I got you." Beautiful, beautiful woman. So anyway, they took her home. Like I said, she wasn't well. My mum was there. She took her home, and so like I said, she wasn't well. The next morning, I'm at the hotel, doing as you do, wedding morning. I'm like getting a shower. It's one of those fancy ones that hits you from all different sides. Like, this is great. And Mrs. had just got ready, and my phone's ringing. And so she brings it in. She's like, "You need to answer the phone." I was like, "No, we don't. It's like, come on, we've just been married. Forget about the phone. Leave it." She's like, "No, you need to answer the phone. It's your brother." It's like, "All right, okay." So I pick it up. I'm like, "Right, what's going on?" It's like, "Nan's dead." "What?" It's like, "No, Nan's dead." What? So I was like, she passed away in her sleep last night. And he was in bits, absolute bits. And I was like, whoa. And that hit me really hard. Because I thought, well, I'm a Christian now. Everything's going well. She was great yesterday. And apparently that's the thing, They peak before they pass. And they were saying, doctors said, she had terrible pneumonia. It kind of riddled her. And she passed away in her sleep. And that hit me because I thought I was on the winning team. I thought everything was going to be good now because I'd said yes to Jesus and everything's going great. But things don't happen to us anymore. That's not the plan. And so I'm struggling with this. And, we had the funeral in Kinethley and kind of trying to gather all that together in my head and trying to think about, like, wow, this is like the one woman in my life who was so much kind of like, I was like, well, I've gained a woman, but I've lost a wonderful one. I just couldn't deal with it. Then I found out that my wife had been having an affair behind my back the whole time. So there was a guy who was living with us, who I worked with, that she'd been sleeping with, and she was like, yeah, I don't love you anymore, I'm throwing you out. And this was like within 6 months of us getting married. And I'm like, what? And then I lost my job, and I'm like depressed, and I'm living in a box room in a shared house with nothing. And I was like, how on earth have I gone from here to here in the space of 6-8 months? It's absolutely ridiculous. And I was really struggling with that. And I blamed God. I got angry at God. I was like, why me? Why now? Like, I'm trying to do the right thing, and you're just spitting in my face. That's kind of what I felt like. And then some guy called Dave Kendall from the church came and knocked on my door and pretty much just busted his way into the kitchen. And he's a big guy, all right? He's softly spoken. I'd probably beat him in a fight, but he's a big guy. Comes through the door and he sits down with us and he goes, Gaz, look, I want to help you get your stuff sorted out. What do you mean? Like, come on. He's like, I know what's going on with your marriage. I know what's going on. You're not in work anymore. Like, I want to sit with you now and deal with your stuff. So, right. Well, where do we start and what do we do? So he got this book out called 12 and a Half Steps to Spiritual Health. Ironically, written by the vicar at that church. But good little program. Based on the 12 and a half steps model. You go through these different steps and you get to like step 4 and you start kind of writing down all the bad things that you've done and all the bad things that have happened to you, and you start going on this journey of forgiveness. And so as part of that, I met with my wife. We were still married at the time, and we tried to resolve things. We got back together. There was another affair later on, and we divorced because forgiveness doesn't make you a doormat, right? If someone still hurts you, it's okay to end that relationship. So that kind of all got cleared up, and we don't talk, but we're amicable. That's all fine. And then went and spoke to my mum, and we had a very lengthy conversation. We still do have very lengthy conversations, even 10 years later. And just telling her like how my childhood made me feel, and telling her that I forgive her for that, and she telling me that she forgives me, and I'm like, well, what? Because she thinks by me sharing my story, I'm painting her in a bad light, and I can understand that. So we talked that out. And then I found my dad. So I think the next slide now is just a picture of me and my dad. If Denver could bring that up. He's got big giant glasses. It's a terrible photo because the sun's behind us. It's not the best. I keep trying to get a better one of him. Anyway, that'll come up, I'm sure. So anyway, yeah, so I found my dad, and we kind of started connecting again. I was able to kind of speak to him on Father's Day and still kind of talk to him from time to time now. He's not a very well man. He's getting on now. He's got arthritis and other stuff going on. He doesn't get out and about very much, but he was very sad and sorry for not being around. Him and my mum had a very terrible relationship, and they both lived in Keighley. My dad was living in Parkwood Flats the whole time I was there. Never knew that I could have just walked up to his door and said hello to him. But that was just the relationship that they had. And so I found my dad, sorted things out with him, and then we got stuck. So we got stuck on my abuser. I was like, look, last I knew, this guy was in prison. That's it. Like, I don't know where he is. I don't know what's going on. The family don't know. So I ain't got a clue. And I just started working at CEX, the computer exchange stores in town, full of dirty moshers that look like me. Yeah, queues out to the back. And I'm working in there. And I said to him, Dave, I was like, look, what can we do? I don't know. He's like, you know what? The first thing we can do is we can pray. All right, fine. So I said a very simple and bold prayer. God, if you're real, because I was still dealing with this, I was like, if you're real, you can help me deal with this situation with my abuser. If you do that, then I'm in. I'm all in. You've got me. Very simple prayer. The next day, I'm at work, and my abuser walked in. And he joined the queue. And as I'm serving, I can see him. And he's getting closer. He's getting closer. He's getting closer. And I'd been wrestling training at this point for a couple of years. So some thoughts of jumping the counter and hitting a tombstone pile driver certainly crossed my mind. But he was coming up the queue. And I thought, you know what, actually, I can avoid him. I'll take my time. Someone else will have to serve him. It'll be great. And that's fine. We'll lock eyes. And I'll forgive him in my heart, and it'll all be fine. Yeah, that'll do. And God had other plans. I had to serve, which I think is a ridiculous word in this situation. I had to serve my abuser. So he gave me his DVDs, And I went and got the discs and cashed it all through the till. And as I went to hand him his change back, we definitely locked eyes. And I could tell you that there was just as much fear in him at this moment as there was in me. I was no longer an 8-year-old boy. You know, I'm a 23-year-old man who's put on some meat since he probably last saw me. And I grabbed his hand as I gave him the change. And again, he probably just wondered, oh my goodness, it's going to hurt me, what's going on? But I was like, this is a moment for me to either make another excuse or to make a move towards dealing with this. So I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, I forgive you for what you did. And I let go. And it honestly felt like I've been carrying an elephant on my back for years, and it just fell off. And he wambled out of the store pretty bewildered as to what's just happened, as you would be. And then I went upstairs, had a break, and just rang Dave. It's like, Dave, you won't believe what's happened. It's like, what? So we're like, go for beers tonight, and we'll talk it over. And so we did that. And I had an opportunity a couple of months later. There was a family funeral that he was at. And as I got there, he was like sat on his own because the whole family had completely like kind of exiled him. No one wanted to do with him, but his mum had passed away. So all the family were there for that. And so he was there. And so I rocked up and I just went and bought him a beer and I sat with him. And I just said, look, I meant what I said. You know, I forgive you for what you did. Like, what's going on? And he started sharing with me, and he's, you know, he'd been in and out of prison, he'd been robbing, drug addictions, he'd had kids but couldn't have access to them, broken relationships. His life was an absolute mess. And I even added him on Facebook and was like, look, if there's anything I can do to help in any way, just let me know. And I kind of felt like my heart went from not just forgiving him, but to kind of loving him. Like, what does loving someone like that look like, even after everything that they've done? And that then kind of spurred me on, really, to be like, you know what? If we loved people more, if we loved each other more, and we didn't take that idea of, well, you know, you're a rapist, you can't come back from that. You're a murderer, you can't come back from that. You're a paedophile, you can't come back from that. You're a whatever, you can't come back from that. Like, there's I think there has to be a shift. And I went from, how do I forgive him, to how do I love him? And sadly, he passed away a couple of years back. As part of the BBC doing their background checks, they asked to speak with him, and turned out he'd died of a drug overdose a couple of years ago. He did ghost me shortly after I added him on Facebook, and again, I don't blame him. I just said, I'm there if you need me. You didn't take me up on that, and that's fine. But I was kind of, from that moment, all right, God, you've got me. I'm all in. What do I do? I got my debts dealt with through CAP, so I had some debts. I started working for them. So I worked there for 7 years. I ran a debt centre and a job club in Bradford. And I worked on their head office team, touring, and kind of whole crazy stuff, teaching people how to speak. And, well, not that anyone there can't speak, just like they've got speakers who go out to churches. So I was teaching them how to do that. And then I was like asking people for money. I did that a lot. And it was kind of like just doing a lot of work with CAP. But for me, the main bit was actually on the ground. It was walking into people's homes and being able to sit with them and go, I know where you're hiding the letters. Because that's where I hid mine. Under your microwave, yeah. Under the pillow, yeah. Under the DVD player, yeah. I know where you're hiding them. I know that the wife doesn't know. Like, all that stuff. Could just talk on a level that I understood. I could talk on a level that they got. When I was talking to the guys at the job club about the benefits and like how people view them, and like, if you're a 60-year-old man now, you could still work. Like this, just dealing with people and going, look, if I can do it, you can do it too. I got no education. I got no GCSEs. I got a criminal record. Me and my brothers used to fight all the time. Like, I can relate to you on a level that is completely different. And I loved that God did that, because he brought me into contact with guys like James and like Calvin at the back here, and like just being able to speak into their lives and be a mate and be a mentor and be like, hey, look, this is what Jesus has done for me. You can do that for you. And seeing people find work and go debt free and find Jesus and baptize these guys. And then I was like, well, what else has God got for me? You know, I want to use every platform that I've got for him. So with the wrestling stuff, like I said, I've been training. I started working shows, and I was like, well, how do I now kind of take that to the next level? And I just said, what have you got for me, God? And so I got baptized. And when I was baptized, there was this, I got baptized years before this, but when I got baptized, we had this guy kind of do a bit of prophecy and kind of speak into speaking to my life, and he goes, you're like a candle that's on fire, and you'll burn really brightly, and people will be attracted to that. But you can't ever let someone put a glass bowl over the top, because you'll run out of oxygen, you'll suffocate, and you'll die. I was like, well, that's a bit deep. But he said, but wherever you shine as a platform, and wherever you've got a platform, you need to shine bright. I was like, oh, wow. How do I interpret that? What does that look like? So I changed my wrestling character to being a Christian character. So I was quoting scripture, I was praying for my opponents before we went out. I was blatantly telling people that I'm a Christian. Yeah, I'll still kick your head in. It was just like, this is my character. And so we were doing that, and that was then drawing people. Like, these wrestlers were coming to me and going, hey, I'm struggling with this situation. Can you pray for me? They're calling me at 2 a.m. going, my mum's just died, guys. I don't know who to speak to. Like, and so I'm starting to see Jesus then kind of bring these guys to me, because the wrestling world is full of people with broken egos and broken lives, because I was drawn to it for that same reason. For me, it was an escape. It was a way to get away from the real world. They're all out there playing characters, but they're broken inside. So God's really using me there with the wrestlers. I'm baptizing a guy in February who become a Christian through knowing me through wrestling. It's amazing. And then I was like, well, how do I take that one step further? So then I was like, right, well, when I put on my own show, I can control the content, right? So I started running my own events. So we're doing like a couple of matches, smack bang in the middle, and then sharing my testimony, telling people about what Jesus has done in my life. So we're touring churches. We're getting hundreds of people through the door. Non-Christians, families, kids, old grannies front row with the handbags. They still come. And I'm just sharing Jesus with them. And we're seeing people come to faith. And what's next? Oh, we'll set up a church. So we did that in Bradford. It's got this wrestling church. So we started that last year, and we baptized 15 people since April. And we're growing and growing, and we're seeing majority, right, about 150 to 200 people coming through the door for the shows. I'd say 90% of them are non-Christian. Yet they're coming because they love wrestling. And then as part of that, they're hearing about Jesus, they're hearing stories, they're seeing these wrestlers like as normal people, but like they're Christians. Like, what? It just breaks people's mind when they go, what, you're a wrestler and a Christian? How do those two things mix? I'm like, Christians are in every walk of life. We're powerlifters, we're comedians, we're just 9-to-5 business owners. Like, we're out there, we're doing normal life. And what I would love to see is more Christians, particularly men, take that idea of any platform that I have is God's platform. And any place I am is God's place. And he's gifted me with that. He's gifted me with my skills and my talents and my abilities. He's gifted me with a story. How do I share that to bring others in a relationship with him? I think, if we had that across the Christian world, my goodness, what would we see? It'd be phenomenal. Particularly, and like I said at the beginning, for men. My heart is with men. It really is. The amount of guys giving themselves to bad stuff, the amount of guys ending their lives, the amount of guys who just sit in silence and just never speak up about what's going on. They're looking for guys like us to share so that they can ring us at 2 a.m. and be like, my mum's just died, I want to speak to you. This is going on, I want to talk to you. My marriage is failing, I want to talk to you. Because we're examples, right? We're role models, and that's Christ in us and through us. My God, like that's riles me up. I got a whole preach on that. But anyway, so I'm now, what am I doing now, right? So I've got the wrestling church thing going on. I'm doing a bunch of other different things. I'm hoping within the next year to kind of go full time with the wrestling, tour around, do whatever. But I am remarried. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 2 little girls, Isla and Isabella, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Oh, that's me there, getting baptized. So Eddie, the guy on the left, he's the guy who we used to drink beers with and play Call of Duty. And the guy on the right, that's John Biggins, who was kind of leading the worship in the church that I went to. So great guys. And that's actually in Ilkley River. And it was raining. And when I went in here, but then I came up there. Like, to kind of whoa, to kind of pull me out. There's another photo where I'm like this, and there's just water flying everywhere. Still had the purple in my hair because I'm a creep. But yeah, so that's we get baptized. I think the next one on is, there's me in my wrestling gear, world champion. My shirt says, pray, eat, wrestle, repeat. And people buy these t-shirts. It's great. I did one show in Bradford, like the whole front row of kids in these t-shirts. I'm like, whoa, come on. What a testimony. But I think for us as men, I've written a whole preach on this. I'll give you it in 2 seconds. What a mantra that is. What do we do first? What Dave said to me, pray. Whatever's going on in our life, give it to God, pray. The next thing, eat. But what do we eat? What do we devour? The Word of God. Let's eat the Word of God. Let's take that into our lives. Then what do? Well, we wrestle with it, don't we? We test it. We try it. We kind of try to understand it. We're wrestling with it. And if we still haven't got it sorted, repeat the process. Back to God. Pray. Back to the Word. Eat it. Wrestle with it. Wrestling fans look at that shirt and they're like, oh, it's a rip-off of, rave, eat, sleep, repeat. But I'm like, nah, there's a much deeper message there. And I see guys and kids running around with these T-shirts on, and I'm like, come on. I love it. So that's at Bradford. That was, just as I'd kind of won the world title, I was beating people up. That's great. I did have a video to show you of me actually like throwing people around, but we didn't get it working, unfortunately. But that's fine. And the next slide is me and the kids. So that's my wife, Beth. She's beautiful. This is at Hey Dougie at St. George's Hall the other week. Beautiful. I love Hey Dougie. It's great. Any dads in the room, if you know Hey Dougie, it's beautiful. So that's Isabella in my wife's hands. So she turns 3 on Valentine's Day. What a birthday. And then that's Isla in my arms, who's just turned 1 in December. So lockdown babies. But no, they're beautiful. And I tell you now, as a dad of girls, oh, what a job that is. What a big job that is. Because I know the world that they're growing into. And I know the men that they're going to come into contact with. And I want to show them, and this is what I really love about what Jesus can do in your life, is they're going to grow up with a mum and a dad. They're going to grow up with no alcohol, with no debt. They're going to grow up with a father that loves them, with a mother that loves them. We're not going to throw them out on the streets at 15. We're going to bring them to church. They're going to have great friends. They're going to be loved and supported and cared for and shown the right way of living your life. And those two, man, they're going to change lives. And that's what I'm like saying thank you to Jesus for. He's brought a great Christian woman into my life. He's given me 2 beautiful little girls. But he's given me the life now where I can break that chain and I can break that generational stuff. Because my other brothers, one of them's just gone into prison. His relationship failed. All of his kids have been taken off him. My middle brother is doing drugs. He's in an absolute mess. Neither of them know Christ. And I look at that and I think that could be where I could have been. If it wasn't for some guy kicking down my door, sitting with me and telling me to get my stuff together. So if there's any of you in this room now and you're thinking, I'm coming to the end of my time, I'm going to retire, put my feet up, I'm going to hang out, God's got more for you. There'll be some young men like me going through some stuff who's waiting for a guy like you to come and kick his door down, sit with him and tell him about Jesus and help him with this stuff. And you never know, you might just be raising up the next Gaz Thompson. You might just be raising up the next broken generational stuff that takes a foothold back from the enemy and puts Christ on that person's life and just changes stuff. Like, come on, guys. You don't know what's out there. So that's my encouragement to you all. I want to thank you for listening to me. I know I went on a bit, but I just think it's all really important stuff. I would keep going.
But part of kind of why we do what we do as men, and again, it's not about numbers. We don't wake up on a Saturday and go, right, okay, we expect 50 people, 30 people, or only 5 or 10. It's never about numbers. It's always about the heart, and it's always about individual people. And, the process of meeting together is part of that. And part of it has been identity. And I think as with what Gaz is saying, one of the things that struck me strongly and always has done is this sense of identity. The other aspect is the aspect of role models. In the world we look at today, you've got your people like your Don Revis, you've got your Pelés over the years, you've got men that we've looked at who have been different sports, or people that have been in culture, people that have maybe been in government and council over the years. And okay, nobody's perfect, everyone's flawed, but there's been role models to look up to. Nowadays, in many different ways, there's a lot less role models. And the other dynamic is that, again, I think you said about breaking the cycle. We, I believe, individually, have the power and authority to break cycles. We have in Christ. We can say that so far and no further. But we can't do it by ourselves, can we? We can't do it alone. None of us are immune to situations. Honesty and accountability, again, is the stuff that I wrote down. And I think that's a massive thing. Is for me, Denver Thompson, to be honest about me and have responsibility about me. So unless I own it and I claim it and I take it for me, then actually I can't help anybody else. But the moment that I take responsibility, I look in the mirror and I say, right, what is my action? What is my response? What is my responsibility in this situation? Again, and one of the biggest things that stood out, and again, in listening to his few times, he said it wasn't just the forgiveness, but it's actually to love. Because I think a lot of times as men, we can forgive, but can we love? And that is the big part of what Jesus did, isn't it? It's a dual course of what he did. He not only forgave, but he actually loved. And sometimes in the Christian circles, we do brand that about, don't we? This scripture that says, well, if you can't forgive, God can't forgive you. That is way more easier said than done. When we've had, abuse, or we've had people reject, or people walk away. And again, a big part of the aspect of us standing on this journey together as men and doing men's breakfast, the other dynamic of that as well was the fact of some of the kind of from Evangelical Alliance, a conference that I was at earlier this year. And, they were saying that the fact of loneliness, and this staggered me, and I had to repent of this because as a leader, this certainly wasn't the avenue that I looked at. And it did say that the loneliest people in society is men from the age of 25 to 45 years old. Now, I have to say, I thought it was maybe young children, or I thought that it was the aspect of elderly people in elderly homes that maybe weren't getting visited. But actually, it says that it's men, not women, but men between the age of 25 and 45. Now, we know also that suicide is the highest rate in men, not women. And again, it's that age between 25 and 45. The other side of that is men are actually more sensitive than women to physical pain and to suffering. So actually, men, we're more vulnerable than we realize. A lot of times we put it on the women. Oh, a lady's going to be more vulnerable or more sensitive. Actually, I know for me as an individual, I'm a wimp. And I don't enjoy crying, but I probably, my eyes are more tearful than they are dry, if I'm honest with you. That's because I've got to serve people on a Sunday morning. No, I'm joking. But no, in all honesty, though, it's because sometimes the struggles that I'm going on internally, the struggles that I see around me, and the frustration is sometimes we all want to change the situations around us. We want justice. We want righteousness. When people have been abused as a child, or, when people have been hurt or wounded, we do want the aspect of justice. You want forgiveness. You want love. You want grace. You want mercy. We want it all to rule, and we want it all to be there. But sometimes we want it in our own gain and our own advantage. But actually, again, one of the other aspects is the most lonely men, again, is between 25 and 45. And also, it actually says that men don't like being alone or being single. Women are happy to be alone a lot of times, and women are happy to be single. But there's something in men that craves about being together with somebody or something. And I'm meaning that by as far as men being together as men, whether that's going fishing. Don't ask me to go fishing. I'll eat your fish, but I won't go fishing with you. Don't ask me to go golfing because I just think it spoils a good walk. I have done it for a few years. It's a bit of an expensive do as well, is golfing. But yeah, I'll go to a football game. I'll go to a rugby game with you. I'll always go and eat a burger with you, as Les knows, or a coffee, because I'm expanding my tent and it's going away from me. But how many of you know that we're better together than we are apart? But again, one of the lies and deceit of the world we're in right now, in the most advanced technical age there is in the world, it's never been before, is actually singleness and loneliness. Because people will tell you they'll work in an office, they'll go to a church of 100 people or 1,000 people, they'll be in a family of about 5, 10, 6 people in the house, but actually they can feel very lonely. It can be a lonely journey. And again, the other aspect is 84% of men are less likely to go to church than women. 84% of men are less likely to go to church than women. And, most churches are actually, 75% women, if you average it out in most churches. Most conferences I go to that's pastoral leaders, even with that, is very similar. There's a lot of women that are involved in leadership and a lot of men that aren't. And so there's some of the figures. I know I don't want to take much of your time, but again, that is why we gather together as men doing men's breakfast, and also why we gather together every few months and do the gathering together of men so that we can encourage each other. And, if you know anybody that's lonely, if you know anybody that's struggling, if you know anybody that's self-harming, or there's aspects of mental well-being they're struggling with, you may not be comfortable in bringing them on a Sunday morning. You may not be comfortable bringing them on a Saturday morning. but we can always have a coffee with them. You know, we're always open and available. I'm always willing to sit and have a coffee. I'm always at the end of a phone, even if it's just an email. You know, I get many people, I don't meet them in person, but sometimes they email me and they email the church, and there's an interaction there.